Welcome back. We're in chapter 10 on motivation. This is part 3 that we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about sex. Yes, I missed this lecture in class because I say all sorts of things. Penis, orgasm, all this stuff. And everybody's like, oh, this is awkward. Because we're going to talk about the physiological of it. We're going to talk about it. It's a huge motivator in our life. And we'll see how it affects us in different things. So let's just jump in there and let's talk about a little bit about sex. Why don't we? See what psychology's got to say about it. Spoiler, it's not really that exciting, but maybe it is. Let's talk about the physical side, physiological mechanics of sexual behavior. First we got to talk about the old hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is basically the main driver in the brain for everything that's fun. Okay? It's going to tell you when you need to eat. It's going to tell you when you need to sleep. It's going to tell you when you need to have sex. It's the party animal of your brain. You know, it's the thalamus, but it's the hypothalamus. It plays an important role. Lesions in medical areas of the hypothalamus completely disrupt male sexuals, rats' ability to engage in sexual behavior. But it does not affect their sexual motivation. They still seek to gain access to sexual receptive females. So we know that this plays a big role because with rats, with lacerations in certain areas of the hypothalamus, their sexual behavior decreases, but their ability to do it doesn't go away. Okay, such that the ability to engage in sexual behavior and the motivation to do so is mediated by different systems of the brain. So even though we go, oh yes, there it all is, but we still do it. So it's different areas. But that's a rat, Doug. What about humans? Humans, basically, disorders that involve abnormal hypothalamus or hypothalamic functions are often associated with the reduction function of the gonads, then reduced sexual functioning. Reduction in the gonads and the production of testosterone and sperm. Note that hormones secreted by the endocrine glands, such as testosterone, which I just mentioned, influence sexual motivation and behavior. So even though we always go, well, there must be an on and off switch for sexual behavior, there's not. There's quite a few different things that play a role in what motivates us sexually, from hormones to different areas of the brain. All of these things drive us, and neurochemicals too drive us also. Some of the other mechanics that we talk about, the enigma and the nucleus accumbens, basically these areas involved in the motivation of sexual behavior, but do not affect the ability to engage in it. Damage in rats results in decreased motivation to engage in sexual behavior, while the ability to do so is still intact. In the old days, when you would hear a movie or something and they'd go, we're going to chemically castrate this person, they would give you chemicals that would basically affect these areas of the brain. Thinking, i.e., if the sexual desire or motivation was gone, you wouldn't be able to engage in it, but the physiological part is still there. So, when we talk about sexuality and we talk about what motivates us, okay, we know through all the research that sex and all its parts causes a neurological change in our system. All right? When we have an orgasm and different things, it causes a release of serotonin, which is the happy drug of our brain. And we like that. It's like, yeah, okay, this feels great. This is fantastic. And so it's kind of like, it's a reward. And so there's a lot of things that go into it. Now, over the years, we've had a lot of questions about sex. I mean, we still do. We get a little bit embarrassed when we talk about it. Doug, I don't like this chapter. It makes me feel funny. But we do. It's funny, but if you talking to people about sexuality and about what they like and different things, people always go, well, I've got a friend. But we're not as open about that. No. And I want to talk about a couple of people that put the idea about, let's talk about sex, let's look at it from a research standpoint. Let's talk about two people, and that'd be Alfred Kinsey and Masters and Johnson. Let's talk about Kinsey first. Alfred Kinsey, in the 1940s at Indiana University, he's a zoologist. What's a zoologist got to do with sex? here's the story. The university was offering classes, all right, and the department was talking, and they had this class that they needed someone to teach. It was called Marriage and Family. It was a class to talk about when you get married, what to expect, And the provost of the university was talking to a bunch of people, and she said, somebody needs to teach this class. And she said, I think, since it's going to be talking about the physiological and stuff, maybe somebody from biology should teach it. And so it got passed down, and so the biology department was like, well, somebody's got to teach this class, the kids, and about sex and what to expect. And they go, Kinsey. What? What are you doing? Nothing. You use zoology. You understand mating and all that. Yes. Boom, you teach it. So Kinsey got this class about marriage and family life in the 1940s. He started teaching the class, and it struck him odd that students started asking him a lot of questions about sexuality, what was normal, what wasn't normal, all these things, and he was answering them. And this kind of intrigued him. And so Kinsey thought, you know what, I want to know what's going on here. And so he created this survey where he sent it out to all the people on the campus and asked them questions about their sexuality and what drove them. Now, Kinsey is probably one of the most controversial figures you could ever bring up in this whole thing. Okay? He followed a group of pedophiles that he had gotten in contact and got a lot of data on them, but that was kind of like highly unethical because he should have reported that. He had very strange sexual behaviors himself. And he wrote a book basically telling everybody, here's what I found in my survey and in my findings. This is the 1940s, okay? You couldn't say sex. I mean, come on. In I Love Lucy in the early 50s, they slept in separate beds. We didn't talk about sex. We didn't say anything about sex. We didn't even, stork brings babies. So Kinsey did this huge survey. And the reason we mention him, even though he has all these bad things, all this stuff, he was the first person to actually go, let's ask questions. I want to know what's happening. And so he did. And when he found out, it was one of those books that, I'll keep this book under my bed. He found out a couple things. He said that women were interested and experienced in sex as men. At this time in history, we always thought women are virgins. They know nothing about sex. No, we were wrong. Both males and females masturbated with negative health consequences. Well, everybody knows that. Not necessarily. Up at this point, we used to have old wives' tales that if you were a chronic masturbator, that you'd have hair on your palms, or it causes a depletion in a lot of the hormones and stuff in your body, which can, i.e., lead to blindness and all these other things. And there was another side that came from the ideal that it was not natural because of something that happened in the Old Testament where a man had masturbated and God killed him. And so it had a huge stigmatism about masturbation. And Freud, don't worry about it, Freud's got to get involved in it. Freud actually said that masturbation was not good because it was not as good as having sexual relationships with a partner. And so it was just bad, 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 bad. It's going to cause you to do this, 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 this. Stop. Well, so they thought, well, nobody's doing it. Well, then they found out a lot of people were doing it, and they're not having any negative consequences. Holy cow. He also found that homosexual actions are fairly common. Okay, we didn't think that any of this stuff was going on. He found out other things that we didn't want to know about bestiality, all these things. He found out this huge Pandora's box of sexual behaviors that we was like, oh dear, how did that happen? Now, as you can guess, this made him successful. No, it didn't. This is the 1940s, kids, when people were like, what? No, ban that. Yes, he got into a ton of trouble. The book was banned. It was just bad. The government pressured the university to fire him. They were going to, but the president stood by him because he was intrigued. He's doing some research. Today, Indiana has a sexual behavior lab in which he's named after. But there was a time that the government put a lot of pressure. A lot of people that donated money put pressure. They wanted him fired. They wanted him strung up. They wanted him killed. They couldn't believe this. So he got brought before the Un-Americans Act. You know, you're destroying America through the youth and telling these wild stories. The stress led to him to having a heart attack, and he died. Okay? And so Kinsey's remembered basically because he was a pioneer. He was the first person to say, let's ask some questions. You know, everybody keeps asking me these questions. People come up to me and they go, is this normal? Is this right? You know, and stuff like that. And people want to know. And so this was an outlet for them to ask and for them to talk about it and say, yeah, this is what I do. Now, things did not bode well for Kinsey. And as time moved on, two researchers, Masters and Johnson, one a psychologist, the other one a gynecologist. This is like a joke waiting to happen. But they decided they were going to study sex. But they were going to study sex from the physiological side. Yes, they were going to know what happened. They were going to write a textbook about what happens during the act of sex. All of this. Now, Masters and Johnson did not want to end up banned, didn't want to be fired, all these other things. And so they did things different than Kinsey did. Instead of just creating this huge survey, sending it out, asking questions, they invited religious leaders and everybody to come down. They want to talk to them about what they wanted to do. Basically, they presented the idea that they wanted to do a physiological study about the sexual different things, laid everything on the line, told everybody up front. It's kind of like, you know, telling everybody, the pool's cold, go ahead and put your foot in, you'll see. You know, they didn't want to push you in and go, hey! They wanted to get you ready. And so they told everybody, and so they were a little more well received. But now when I say that they did a physiological study, they did a physiological study. Basically, they would invite people down to the lab to have intercourse while being monitored, or masturbate, or different things while being monitored. In a lot of books and different things that you'll read, they said that they had a problem with a lot of the fraternities would send a lot of people down there as part of their hazing to go through the experiment and different things. They had a lot of things they had to do. But they did all this research and they published a book about the physiologicals of sex. And you're going, oh, I bet it's a nasty little book. It's only nasty if you're a good biology major, because it basically did put it down into perspectives as this is what happens physiologically. Step by step by step. Okay? What they really kept, a couple of things that they took away from it, is that basically they observed people engaging in sexual behaviors. They measured the physical variables, blood pressure, respiratory rate, all this stuff. You know? And they measured sexual arousal. You know, how much vaginal lubrication, how much did the penis become erect, different things, the circumference, the measurement, all these things. They did all this stuff. Now, when they got done, they came up with a couple of things, conclusions. One of them is they discovered what they call the sexual response cycle. And they held this to be pretty much true for men and women. And then we start off with excitement, which is the arousal phase. Okay? And so we have this phase where we first start engaging in sexual behavior. We get aroused, you know, blood starts flowing, starts pumping. We start to have lubricants to our vagina. We start to get a erection, you know. Then we move into the plateau. Plateau is increased swelling and blood flow to the clitoris and different areas of the vagina. We start to see pre-ejaculation fluids. This is the actual act of sex. We're building up to the third stage, which, as you can see, the spike in arousal is orgasm, which is basically rhythmic contractions for ejaculation and different things for women. After which, we see a fall off, which was known as the resolution, where we return to an unaroused state, or we return back down to homeostasis. Well, okay. Well, why is that important, Doug? That's kind of awkward. Well, a couple things came out of this. One, they found out, there's a difference in this rest period in ages. As men get older, this takes longer. They found out that women can have multiple orgasms before they have to go back down to the resolution stage. They also found out that masturbation and actual sexual intercourse physiologically are the same. I mean, here Freud said, no, they're different. They're all this and oh, it's bad. But now they've said, physiologically, all the things that we've been taught that's bad and all these things that we say, oh, it won't be harmful, they're not. It is basically the way the body works. This is how everything's going to happen. This is normal. This is everything. And so they basically talked and brought in the physiological side of sexuality. And they debunked a lot of other myths that we had up at that time about the act of sex. Let's talk a little bit about sexual orientation. Sexual orientation today is a huge topic and how we look at it. I don't spend a lot of time on this because I feel like if you're in college and you don't know what a homosexual is, you don't know what a heterosexual is, then why are you in college? Have you been living under a rock? Because that's been the big thing we've talked about for the last 20 years. Okay? And so everybody should be pretty much familiar with it. Now, sexual orientation basically means that it's an emotional or erotic attraction towards another individual. It means who are you basically sexually drawn to? Oh, I think that person's attractive. I think this person's attractive. Who are you drawn to? That's your sexual orientation. Kinsey said that it's pretty much we're on a continuum. Okay, he believed that from homosexuality to heterosexuality is like a 1 to a 5, and that we fluctuate a little bit on that. Okay, and that a certain percentage is 100% heterosexual, 100% is 100% homosexual. But then we can kind of fluctuate a little bit. Okay, well, Doug, I don't see how you fluctuate a little bit. Well, let's say that you say, well, I'm attracted to, I'm heterosexual, but yet you might see somebody who's like, well, now that's a good-looking guy, or that's a good-looking girl. Okay, they're a finely attractive person. He kind of said that we were on a continuum. Most people kind of think that it's relatively stable. Okay, it's the characteristics of a person. It's not a choice. There's anywhere between 3 to 10% of the adult population identifies as a homosexuality. Basically, I think the number fluctuates all the way up to maybe the highest about 12 to 13%. Now, the unique thing about this is in the 1940s when Kinsey published his study and asked about sexual orientation, he found out that, i.e., 10% of the people he surveyed identified as homosexual. And so we see that continuity or that continuance all the way up to today about the population. What makes someone heterosexual versus homosexual? It's previously thought it's caused by different socializations or experiences. Research shows that this is not true. Okay? There's nowhere in research that says if you observe something, then that's where you're going to do it. If you were raised by two homosexuals, you're going to be homosexual yourself. No. I mean, if we think about that logic, if we watch something, does that mean that we become it? Does that mean that if you watch a World War II movie and you watch some Nazis, does that mean, those Nazis, I've watched Nazis, I am now a Nazi? No. We don't just watch stuff. I've watched clowns, I've become a clown now. No. Okay, so that's what we're trying to apply this. So you have to look internal. Okay, there's got to be something driving that's causing that. Genetics and biology, mechanics, research has found a difference in brain structure and function between heterosexuals and homosexuals. So now we're starting to see, yes, there is a physiological difference in our brains, in our wiring. Okay, it's not a choice. Okay, it's kind of like saying I bought a VCR and it doesn't play DVDs. Well, you bought a VCR. It's set up to play VCR. I don't even know why I'm using this example because probably none of you know. VCR, what is that? Let's just say it's like a CD or you download music. I don't know. I can't think of a good. I'm old. Let's forget it. But yes, there's different wiring and that's kind of a cause of it. All right? And so basically we all are driven to find certain things that we find attractive. Gender identity, once again, this is a big topic today about how people identify themselves. Gender identity doesn't have anything to do with the biology, okay? That's what everybody gets always in Torah. We're not talking about biology, we're just talking about how our identity, how we see ourselves, okay? It's not based on biology, it's our sense of being male or female, okay? You could be biologically a male, but your identity, but you sense or you feel that you're a female. I feel more like a female than I do anything. I feel more this way. Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with biology. Okay, it has all to do about how we identify ourselves or how we feel, our sense of it. When we talk about this, one of the things that we do have in psychology is we have gender dysphoria. It's a diagnosis describing individuals who do not identify as gender, but most people will assume that they are. It must exist for 6 months, must result in significant distress, dysfunction, and meet diagnosis created. Who do not identify as the gender that most people would assume they are. Now, when we talk about this, most people go, well, Doug, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about transgender people. You're talking about them. So you're basically, psychology says they have a mental illness. All right, slow down, back up. That's not what it says. Now, please note here that it says, this is the most important part about it. Results, significant distress or dysfunction must be meet this diagnosis. If you identify yourself, okay, if everybody looks at me and they go, Doug, you're a male. And I go, no, I feel more that I'm a female. Okay? If this doesn't cause me distress, okay, if I'm comfortable dressing as a female, if I'm comfortable dressing as a male, if I'm comfortable with that and that's not causing me stress, then that's not a diagnosis. Okay? And that's the one thing about mental illnesses is that if they start causing you significant problems in life, if they start causing you to have problems, then yes, it could be. But if you feel very confident and you feel, well, this is the way I feel and this makes me feel happy and this makes me feel confident, then that's fine. You are okay. All right? So always remember that we're talking about distress and dysfunction. Transgender hormone therapy is the use of hormones to make one's body appear more like the opposite sex. You can go in through therapy, have breast enlargement, different things. You can have yourself reassigned, okay, and to that other gender. Well, Doug, that just seems abnormal. No, it's not. Once again, if it doesn't cause you, the person that's making the decision, the person who feels good about it, if it doesn't cause you problems, then that's fine, okay? Everybody has their own right. That's almost like saying, I love wearing a black polo. I think it looks good on me. Well, other people might go, I don't think it looks that good. Doug, it makes you look dark and forbidden. But it makes me happy. And if it makes me happy, it's not going to cause me distress. You're not going to wear clothes that, I'm going to wear this. I hate it. It makes me feel sad. But I'm going to wear it anyway. No, we don't do that. And the same thing here. Okay? Gender identity. We've seen a lot of people who have gone through these different things. One of the first person that I knew about it was probably Sonny and Cher's daughter, who was Chastity. As she got older, she felt that she was more a male, and so she became a he. And so now Chastity is known as Chaz, and here's Chaz today. And he transitioned from that to more align with what he felt like he is today, which is a male. Okay? Now, biologically, he was born a female. His identity is male. Okay? He identifies himself as a male. He is happy with that, and he's very well suited. And that's really, he has no problems. So he doesn't have any of those issues that everybody, oh, that would be an issue. No. It doesn't cause him problems. It doesn't cause him issues. Today, we're starting to see a lot more different people coming. Laverne Cox is probably much of the open transgender actress who's come out and talked about different things in her career. And so we need to see that sometimes people kind of want to be more comfortable in their own skin. Okay? And that's an important thing in psychology, is that we want people to feel that balance, that homeostasis. I want to feel comfortable with who I am and what I am. Okay? I'm always telling students, be happy with who you are, not what you are. Okay? Be happy with everything about your life. And if you're comfortable and you're happy being one way or the other, then that is okay in my book. Okay? Because I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to have that level of comfort. I don't want people to be anxious. I don't want people to be depressed about things. I don't want you to be this way or that way. I want you to be kind of like, I feel confident, I feel comfortable. Okay? Because in my profession, that's one thing we concern ourselves with, is that we want you to be happy, healthy, and productive in life. All right? And whatever we can do to support that and help that, we're about that. That brings us to the end of that talk. And now when we come back in the last video in the series, in Chapter 10, we'll talk a little bit about emotions. We'll talk a little bit about theories, the biology, and we'll talk about how well we can interpret emotions. I can tell by that smile on your face, you're glad the video has come to an end. Or are you happy? Ooh. Until next time, bye.